Several civil rights groups are challenging the state of Georgia over its controversial new voting laws. On Thursday, Republican Governor Brian Kemp signed the new restrictions into law after it passed through the state's Republican-controlled Senate. The law includes new ID requirements for Georgia voters. It also limits the number of ballot drop boxes across the state and prevents third parties from handing out food or beverages to voters waiting in line. The state's Republican lawmakers claim the move was made to increase election security. Critics of the law say it was made in an effort to stifle Georgia's growing Democratic voter base following the 2020 election. The new bill has prompted calls for boycotts across the state of Georgia. The National Black Justice Coalition is calling for the PGA Tour and the Masters to relocate next month's major tournament at Augusta. In a statement, the director of the NBJC said, quote, "Georgia's new law restricting voting access is designed to turn back the clock on civil rights and return Black and poor and already disenfranchised voters in Georgia to second-class citizens." In addition, the MLB is facing calls to move its All-Star game from Atlanta in July, and several of the state's largest businesses are facing a possible boycott following the signing of the new legislation. David Johns joins me now from Washington. He is the executive director of the National Black Justice Coalition. President Biden called SB 202 the 2020 first century version of Jim Crow. In your statement, you said this new voting law is designed to return already disenfranchised voters in Georgia to second-class citizens. What does your organization plan to do to challenge this newly passed legislation?
I appreciate the question, Nikki. And what we plan to do is to continue to invite organizations like the PGA, the Augusta Masters, and other companies that have issued statements suggesting that they value Black lives, that they believe in community, and that they want to rebuild and support democracy to prove it. The PGA has issued statements in the past suggesting that they would like to do more to address issues around diversity and equity, the lack of racial diversity amongst the players that are members of the PGA, for example. And responding in this moment where there has been legislation introduced that is a threat to already marginalized, disenfranchised communities is a way for them to make real what is otherwise a pithy statement. And so we plan to continue to invite them to follow through on their words with meaningful action.
David, throughout the 2020 election process, Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, continually disputed any claims of election fraud. So why was this legislation so imperative for the state's Republican Party to pass? And what exactly does it entail?
As you mentioned in the package, the bill makes significant changes to state voting practices in ways that we know will disproportionately impact poor, stigmatized, minoritized communities. Communities that are, by and large, interested in supporting the principles of the Democratic Party in the state. And this is a reaction to what we saw in the most recent election and the turnout that delivered Senators Warnock and Ossoff to the United States Senate. It's a reaction to the organizing that has been led by Black women, including Stacey Abrams, and so many other campaigns and organizations. Power Rising comes to mind. And so we should all be clear that this is an attempt to hold on to power in ways that are not aligned with the people of the state of Georgia. And my hope is that anyone who is unclear about that will listen as we join the chorus of so many other individuals and organizations who are highlighting how incredibly problematic the passage of this bill is. And if there's one thing that I would just want to highlight that people should be mindful of in this moment is that so many of us across the nation were made aware of the fact that this bill has been signed into law because a Black woman. Representative Park Cannon, who is a representative of Georgia's 58th district, was arrested at her place of employment, attempting to do her job, knocking on the door while Governor Kemp signed this bill into law. And the fact that she was arrested, that she is now added to the list of Black women lawmakers who have been arrested in the state of Georgia for doing their job, should offer up whatever additional examples people need to understand that this is motivated by power and an attempt to continue to persecute communities who already show up with significant unmet needs.
David, you and your organization have called on the PGA Tour to move from the Masters from Augusta this year. What message do you think this would send to the state's legislature? And do you think the tournament could actually be relocated?
Absolutely. The tournament could be relocated. It could be postponed. There are so many things that could happen. And there's evidence of states and associations who care about humanity and who care about community in our country responding similarly. Let us not forget that in 2016, North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory faced pressure from companies located in North Carolina who signed on to a letter in opposition to a bathroom bill that attempted to control the places where trans people could access public restrooms. And there were also companies that committed to not do business with the state as a result of the ban. The same year, Georgia Governor Nathan Deal faced pressures as he announced ultimately that he was going to veto a religious discrimination. It was called religious freedom, but it was really an attempt to make legal employment and religious discrimination on the basis of LGBTQIA plus identity or sexual minority status. And so I say that to say that there has been evidence of boycotts of this nature and then holding companies accountable for the things that they purport to care about to work and be effective. And the direct answer to your question is yes, those who are responsible for the tournament in Augusta have the power to respond in ways that are thoughtful. The PGA, which is separate but related and seeks to profit from this tournament, has an obligation to live up to the things that they purport to care about. For anyone who is interested and qualified, there is an opening for diversity and equity leader with the PGA now. And ultimately, each of us have the opportunity to have what feels in this moment to so many like uncomfortable conversations about what it means for us to be citizens in this country, where there are still too many of us who are not treated fairly or equally.
Several of Georgia's largest corporations have remained silent on the issue. What message does this send to the state and the country about their stance on equal voting rights?
My hope is that it sends a signal to consumers who allow companies to exist and to thrive that we should be paying attention to more than just lip service. There are so many companies that tripped over themselves to issue statements affirming their support of the Black Lives Matter movement, to stand in solidarity with the LGBTQIA community in Pride Month and in months since. And it is important for us to hold companies accountable to follow up in action. And so my hope is that the silence won't be tolerated because consumers will ensure that there is a necessary response.
David Johns, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.